We want to make sure that we pat our steaks dry so we get a really good sear. We're going to go ahead and do this on both sides. And after we salt these, we're going to rest them for about 30 minutes so they can come up to room temperature. When you're salting, you want to make sure that you're seasoning from really high above so that you get a nice even layer. We're not going to put pepper on these. That's going to be a little bit later. We don't want that to burn. Alright, now while we're waiting on our steaks, we're going to go ahead and get our salmon ready. We want to make sure that we're using skin-on salmon so that we can get that skin nice and crispy. We're going to season it with some fresh cracked black pepper. We're not going to salt it just yet because we don't want to bring out any moisture before cooking. We're also going to let these get to room temperature. Back to our steaks. Now we want to pat these dry again just before we put them in the pan because the salt has gone ahead and brought out some of that excess moisture. We're going to heat our pan up really high and we're going to add in about 2 tablespoons of canola oil just before it gets to the smoking point. And we're going to put these steaks in away from us. It's going to be really hot. We want to leave them for about 3 to 5 minutes on each side to get a nice sear. While we're doing this, we're going to pepper the opposite side. We're adding the pepper now so that it doesn't burn. Had we put it on there in a really high heat, it would have given us a really acrid flavor. Now you'll know that it's ready once it starts to lift from the pan. You see right there, it's still sticking a little bit. We're going to go ahead and leave it for a few more minutes. Now while we're waiting for our steaks to be finished on this side, we're going to add a little aromatics and flavor to the party. I've got a sprig of rosemary. We're going to add a few cloves of garlic. No need to peel, just go ahead and smash them to unlock the flavor and put them right in. It doesn't really matter because we're going to strain them out later. And then we're also going to add about 2 tablespoons of butter. Now once our steaks start to release, we're going to flip them over and baste them with this butter and aromatic. We want both sides to taste good. And we're going to go ahead and put these into a 375-degree oven for about 10 minutes until we get to a nice medium rare. Oops, looks like we lost one. Well, actually the other steak was a little bit thinner, so I took that out a little earlier so that it wouldn't be overdone. We're going to take this guy out and start working on our pan sauce. We're going to bring 1 chopped shallot to the party. Shallots are like onions, but they're going to melt into the sauce a little bit better. We're going to go ahead and sweat this out over medium heat for about 45 seconds. Make sure we get all the brown bits off the bottom because that's where all the flavor is. Once we've got that sweated out, we want to bring in a half a cup of bourbon. If you're doing this over an actual flame, you want to be careful because the steam can cause it to ignite and you'll have a huge fire in your hands. We're going to let this alcohol evaporate out so that we're just left with the flavor of the bourbon. Make sure that you're scraping the bottom, getting all those brown bits off, concentrating the flavor. And we've gone ahead and added 2 cups of beef stock, and we want to reduce this over a medium-high heat. Still leaving all those aromatics in there, concentrating our flavor. Now we very much could reduce the sauce as is, but I want a more refined velvety texture. So we're gonna pass this through a strainer and put it into a saucepan. That's gonna catch all those bits we were talking about before. We're gonna do this over medium-high heat till it evaporates and reduces by about 2/3. Add about 2 tablespoons of cream. Bring it back up to heat. Use a little tiny whisk for this. Just let this reduce, taste a little bit for flavor. We don't want to add any salt right now because it's going to reduce. We don't want to have a false impression of how much we're going to need at the end. There I've added in some cold butter, squeeze of lemon juice, a little bit more cold butter. Cold butter to a sauce, that's what's called mounting. That's going to give the sauce more body. See right now how the bubbles are stacking on top of themselves. Right now we're going to add in one of my little secrets, some Parmesan Reggiano. Not the same thing as the Parmesan cheese you get on the shelves. This you'd have to check the cheese section for. We're gonna do about a half a cup of this. This is on medium heat right now. We want to keep whisking, making sure that nothing's sticking to the bottom of the pan or burning. And just keep reducing. With our sauce finished, we're gonna set that aside off heat, and we're gonna get our salmon started. We've got a medium-high heat pan, added about 2 tablespoons of canola oil, and we're gonna put the salmon in away from us. You see we've salted it just before so it doesn't draw out any excess moisture. Now if you want really crispy skin on salmon, the key is to not touch it. Don't try to flip it until it's ready. Adding about a tablespoon of butter in here for some more flavor because, of course, butter is flavor. See, I'm sort of checking the edges every couple of minutes or so. It's not quite ready yet. Now when it is time to flip it, you want to flip it away from you a little bit more carefully than I did. We've got this other guy over here. See what happens when you don't wait? And I forced it. We're still gonna eat it though. We're gonna finish the salmon by placing the whole pan into a 325-degree oven for about 6 minutes. That'll give us a nice medium center. After we've taken the salmon out, we're gonna bring the pan back to heat over medium and deglaze with a cup of Moscato. We're using Moscato because we want to reinforce the flavor of one of my homemade jams, which is ginger peach Moscato. We're going to use 8 ounces of this, and like I said, we want to keep it over medium heat and we want to stir constantly. There's a lot of sugar in here, and if it burns, your sauce is going to be useless. Want to add a pinch of salt, not too much, because again, this is going to reduce down to a glaze and we don't want it to be too salty. If you find yourself that you've gotten a little bit too much, you can add a little bit more Moscato. Once it's down and reduced to a glaze like this, we can take it off heat and start plating. And here we have it. Crispy skinned salmon with ginger peach Moscato preserves. You can get these preserves on my website at justchefmac.com. And here we have our perfectly medium rare steak with our bourbon cream pan sauce. Now you notice you don't see any juices running all over the plate. That's because we've allowed our steak to rest before cutting it. I know a lot of people have an aversion to a medium rare steak, but if you're getting it from a good source, there's almost no risk at all. Alright guys, if you enjoyed this video, go ahead and leave a like, comment, and subscribe.